This is the round ahead. Thanks to Coles, Nat Edwards, Josh Gabelich and Chad Wingard with you. And Chad, we're nearly 4 rounds in. There's so many highs and lows already.
I know, and unfortunately our Hawks aren't playing this week, so it's a bit of a sad report.
I knew you would somehow manage to get the Hawks into the conversation. Any surprises from your point of view?
Oh, Nat, it's only April, but there is a lot of pressure on a few different clubs right now.
There are, so plenty to dissect. Let's get straight into things. This is what's coming up in round 4. 3 massive games to kick us off, including the Suns and Crows, which at the start of the season not many would have had as one of the games of the round. Can the Lions break one last hoodoo on Saturday? Luke Parker faces off against the Swans, his former side, for the first time. As we move to Sunday, the Saints kick off a 2-week stay in South Australia with a game against the Power. And we finish off the round with a cracker in the West between Fremantle and the Dogs. So much to unpack, so we're going to dive straight into it. As always, it's Thursday night footy, thanks to Coles. 2 traditional rivals going head-to-head. So it's the winless Blues up against the might of Collingwood. And Chad, as you've already moved to the screen, I like this, the Blues are staring down the barrel of an 0-4 start to the season. We know there's plenty going wrong, but you want to highlight their kicking woes in particular.
Yes, Nat. Unfortunately, if you're a Blues fan, please look away. This is going to be tough to watch. But yes, Carlton are shooting themselves in the foot. And we're just going to roll through a bit of tape. They're seeing ghosts at the moment in the back line. So you see McGovern here. If you pause it there, you can just see he should have picked that up and passed it on. But again, soccering in a back 50 is just not on as a goal against. Again, Haynes here, under perceived pressure, where he kicks it is just not on. Turnover there, it's always going to be dangerous and hard to, I suppose, stop that. But what worries me the most is that their turnovers. So yes, they want to go through the corridor, but at what cost? Last week, they had 4 goals total scored in the second half. But what hurt them is the intercepts. They got 6.2 goals scored against them, 4.1 in front half turnovers. So that's really worrying, and teams are going to capitalise on that. So, and you can see this one here from Zachy Williams. The one I really want to point out is that where he kicks this, it's a 40-metre kick. And where's the outnumber? It's only 2 Carlton players against 4 Bulldogs. That is just not the kind of ball movement that Carlton really need.
Chad, they're 0-3. They head to the MCG tomorrow night. With their season on life support, it's a long way back from 0-4, but their second halves are becoming a real pattern, a real area of concern.
Yes, and that's their bang for buck. So they've only scored 8 goals total in their second halves. But what's worrying is that they've conceded 24 goals against. So you ask me again, they're going through the corridor at what cost? 0-3.
A massive cost and a massive price to pay. Lots for Michael Voss to sort out before Thursday night footy. From a Collingwood perspective, Josh, they're 2-1 coming off the bye, but their coach in Craig McRae has a little bit of a selection dilemma on his hands when it comes to their tools.
Yes, you're right, Nat. A real selection squeeze at Collingwood right now, because Brodie Mychek did miss that game against the Western Bulldogs. Going back to before the bye, he came out quite late in that week due to back soreness. Mason Cox came in. I wonder if Craig McRae reverts to Triple M, because it was so effective against Port Adelaide back in round 1. I'm talking about Dan McStay, Tim Membry and Brodie Mychek, all in the same forward line. They combined for 10 goals in round 1. They look so damaging together. We saw that big incident with Mason Cox and Rory Lobb in that game. And it's not the only issue in terms of selection. They've got to replace Reece McInnes down back. He's done his ACL since we last saw Collingwood. Billy Frampton's a premiership player, hasn't played yet in 2025. He is firming to come in for the first time. And Charlie Dean's the other consideration there. But you're right, a big selection squeeze at Collingwood.
Is Triple M something you've come up with and you're trying to catch on and become a trend?
I can't claim that. I definitely can't claim that. I have heard it and I like it. I'm sticking with it.
Okay, cool. So you're plagiarising it. All right, that's fine. This is my favourite rivalry, genuinely in the AFL. So we couldn't resist the temptation to go back into the archive and pick out our top 5 moments between Collingwood and Carlton. Number 5. Round 23, 2022, who could forget this moment? Because Pies star Jamie Elliott kicks the match-winning goal to seal a Collingwood comeback, but the victory was even sweeter for the Pies because they knocked Carlton out of the finals by 0.6%, Chad.
0.6.
What about this one? Eddie Betts, what a star he is.
And just one of his many Goal of the Year nominations, but this one's very special. I mean, you see he's on the boundary, on his right foot, stops on a diamond and puts it through. But what's really funny about this one is that he's celebrating, he's trying to find his teammates. And where are they? They're in a biff.
Come on, the crowd didn't know where they were looking. Some of them even missed Eddie Betts' goal of the year. Now, number 3. This one, controversial because Mick Malthouse was so used to seeing him in Collingwood colours, he made the switch in 2013. He faces the Pies for the first time in the opposition coach's box for Carlton. The Pies, though, had the last laugh because they won it in a thriller Not a great day for Mick at the office. Now, what about this one? Number 2. Jesaulenko, you beauty. What a mark. It's an iconic moment in our history. The 1970 grand final, the Blues were down by 44 points at half-time, Josh. In front of the biggest crowd of all time, they mount this comeback.
122,000. It is the biggest all-time crowd, and I don't think we'll ever see that unless they do something quite crazy to the MCG.
Now, coming in at number 1 is yet another Carlton premiership, and this was 1979, the grand final. And Josh, I'm sorry to bring this up as a Collingwood fan. You weren't born yet, but surely you know this moment.
No, I wasn't born, Nat, but I have seen this many, many times. I mean, that is out. That is well out.
Wayne Harms with the massive slap tap back into Sheldon, who kicks the goal, and the Blues win another flag against the Pies in 1979. So that's our top 5. Whether you agree, disagree, I don't know. Join in the conversation. But let's get back on to another game. And Carlton isn't the only team that's in struggle town right now. So is Geelong and Melbourne. And these two sides meet at GMHBA Stadium on Friday night. They both come into this game having lost their last 2 games. The heat, Chad, is really on Melbourne at the moment as a football club. We know about their love fest. It's not really working out for them all that well at the moment. But has their premiership window closed completely?
Well, if you ask me personally, I think their premiership window has closed. And what's probably worrying about me the most is that they might have left it a year too late to probably capitalise on some of the guys that they could have traded off. I mean, Josh, you think about the guys that are in, I suppose, their age bracket. You've got Stephen May, 33, Gawn, 33, Viney, 31 next week. And then you've got Petrarca at 29. So they're your midfield unit. And they're obviously ageing. They've been premiership players. But at what point, when you're struggling, do you have to try and capitalise on these stars?
It's an interesting point because they had an opportunity last year with Jack Viney, with Christian Petrarca and with Clayton Oliver, even Keziah Pickett, to move them on and to replenish at the draft. But I have to say, there is so much doom and gloom around Melbourne this week, and for good reason, because of what they've produced to start this year. But their talent, 21 and under, is so good. What they've done at the draft in the last handful of years under Tim Lamb and Jason Taylor has been so impressive. Last year they got Harvey Langford and Xavier Lindsay, both of them are rising star contenders this year. 12 months earlier, they got Caleb Windsor, who is already a legit star in this game. We're going to see him really explode this year. Matt Jefferson's a bit unproven at this point. Colton Tholstrop's a bit unproven at this point. But Jacob Van Rooyen is another one that's proven across the last 24 months that he can be a long-term solution.
But could
in
they have
attack.
gotten more? I know they've gotten back into the draft and they've got some excellent talent coming through, but could they gotten more if
Definitely.
they had traded out some of those players you're talking about, Chad?
Well, and in NBA terms, we call it addition by subtraction. So the teams get better by losing some of their players. So, and in terms of that, what Hawthorn did, they got rid of Jago O'Meara, not got rid of, but they traded him and he got an opportunity. Same as Tom Mitchell. But they traded them when Tom Mitchell was 29 and Jago was 28. But what that allowed was the Will Days, the Jai Newcomb, the James Worpel to get minutes in their midfield. And I suppose you have to trade out these guys at one point because otherwise you might have a Richmond situation where you lose all these players all at once and then you've got to, I suppose, start from scratch. So at what point do you kind of have that transition?
That's a good point.
Well, one of the players that made Melbourne look absolutely second-rate last week was Gold Coast gun Matt Rowell, and right now he is riding a wave of praise. He got a perfect 10 in the coaches' votes. He's the #1 player in the competition according to the AFL player ratings, and guys, he is no sure thing to beat the Gold Coast Suns last year. Did you see what I did with all my puns?
I did.
Yeah,
Very good.
No chuckle? No? Okay,
Please
fine.
continue.
I will continue, and as we roll the tape, let's take a look at the evolution of Matt Rowell. And we know that he entered the AFL with just so much expectation, given he was the #1 pick in that 2019 draft. He debuted in round 1 the following season, but he really made a statement in his second game of league footy. He polled 3 Brownlow votes in that game, and then the next week, another 3, and the week after that, another 3, and then as we know, round 5, his season was cut short with that awful shoulder injury, but he's such a student of the game. He's still working away, he's got his notebook, he's taking his notes, and he makes his long-awaited return in 2021, only for a knee injury to ruin that season as well. So frustrating for poor Matt Rowell early on in his career, but he began building back into the player we knew he could be over the next couple of years. Last year, the contested beast was back in 2024. 25 Brownlow votes, a career best for him. But this year already, Josh, it looks like a more dynamic Matt Rowell, early signs say he's elevated his game, and I think we're finally seeing what we all expected of this young son. And you caught up with him at the weekend and spoke to him. Where do you think the improvements come from?
Well, he doesn't give too much away when he speaks to the media now, because he's got a big decision to make. We understand the contract decision that I don't think we'll get a resolution anytime soon. Doesn't mean he's going to leave the Gold Coast Suns, but I did glean a few tidbits from the conversation in the rooms. It was a humming Gold Coast Suns rooms, of course, on Saturday afternoon. He has gone to work on his explosiveness, and we've seen that already in the first 2 games of 2025. It's a key reason we're seeing this evolution, because he's been an inside ball forever, and in fact, he's averaging more contested possessions than ever before. But his split between contested ball and uncontested ball is as even as it's ever been. He's having far more impact on the scoreboard, and it's due to this work with this sprint coach. It's part of the reason why he's exploding out of stoppage. So I just think he's becoming far more damaging, and that's the reason why he's rated number 1 in the AFL after 3 rounds. Chad, could he be the number 1 midfielder in the game by the end of this season?
And I think he can. I think the supporting cast around him elevates him. You think about the players that are coming off the back line that they brought in, Rowell, Noble, and they've got, some players in the midfield that are really adding to their depth. And I think what makes him so impressive that his clearance work. So he had 13 clearances and he had 9 of those were centre bounces. 9 of those were centre bounces. Some people don't even get that in a whole season. It's unbelievable how much work he's doing. And I think the impact, like you said, the explosiveness to get out of the stoppage as well. So I think the dual threat that he possesses now is just, it's super clever what they've done. And I think he's really, obviously he's a studious of the game, and just how he's developed is really impressive.
And the Suns are really exciting to watch at the moment, Josh. And we've heard Coach Damien Hardwick talk about them discovering their identity. And there's a little bit of a theme around it this year too.
Well, no one does themes like Damien Hardwick. He did it for more than a decade at Richmond, and he used little bits and pieces like NFL helmets, vinyl records. He used hammers at different times. He wrote letters. He had greats write letters to the club. But as you can see on the screen right now, tap tap was a theme that was used on the weekend. I did a bit of investigation post-game because he's leaning into the Detroit Pistons of the late 80s, early 90s, the bad boy era. I'm talking about Isaiah Thomas. I'm talking about Dennis Rodman. And back then, they were renowned for their aggression on defence. They came up against more fancied opposition like the Magic Johnson LA Lakers and the Chicago Bulls of the Michael Jordan era, and they upstaged them. They won 2 titles during that period, and tap tap is something they would say on court to each other when they wanted to raise the intensity on court. So Matt Rowell, Noah Anderson, Tuke Miller and those types in the midfield, they were saying that on ground at the MCG on Saturday.
Well, they're going to have to tap on Saturday because it's a huge test for the Suns. They face Adelaide at People First Stadium. I'm really looking forward to this game. Isaac Rankine faces the Suns again, his former side. And Chad, the way that he has transformed himself into a midfielder this season has been so impressive. But what makes him so damaging?
Well, he's always had that class. So he's been a small forward. He knows how to take the opportunity when it arises. But what I suppose is really impressive now is his clearance work. He had a team high 8 clearances on the weekend. He had 30 disposable. But what's the most impressive thing about that is that 19 of those disposals was contested. So you think about the midfielders who are very classy. Normally it's on the outside, like they're getting the handball, then they're finishing off. He's doing both, and it's super impressive. I hope that he can keep it up. I know they haven't had the best opposition they've come against last 2 weeks, but I think this week is going to be a big test for both of them.
I cannot wait for this match. I've cancelled all of my plans. Saturday afternoon on the couch for sure. To the reigning premier now in the Brisbane Lions, and over the last couple of seasons they've had a few hoodoos to overcome on their way to winning that premiership last year. And Josh, there's one more hoodoo that they need to tick off the list.
You're right, Nat. And this is one that goes under the radar a little bit because Chris Fagan has ticked almost all of these hoodoos off his list since he resurrected that club in Brisbane. But he's got one against Richmond at the MCG. They haven't beaten Richmond there since 2009. Admittedly, they don't play them too often there, but it is one that is a genuine focus internally. They haven't beaten Richmond at Docklands since 2002, so they don't beat them too often in Melbourne. I think they will come Saturday afternoon, though.
Are you giving the Tigers any chance whatsoever?
I was going to say, you're trying to set me up for upset of the round. You're trying to catch me in again.
Come on.
No, I think they've been competitive, but I think they'll be too strong for them.
Okay, well, the Saints, on the other hand, are 2-1. And to quote Coach Ross Lyon, they're not marinating, underused word, in their early season success, but they've had their injury woes in the pre-season. But Josh, you want to highlight some Saints who have stepped up and will need to do so again as they face Port Adelaide on Sunday.
Well, now, we know the known commodities at Moorabbin. Jack Sinclair, Cal Wilkie, Rowell Marshall, they're firing right now, but they've been firing for years at that football club. I want to highlight a few other names that are making a big splash at RSCA Park. I want to start with Jack Macrae because right now he is the best value recruit of last October's trade period. He may never be an All-Australian again, but he's gone back inside at St Kilda and he's absolutely thriving. He's always been a ball magnet, but he's having a big impact. He's number 1 in the AFL right now for contested possessions. He's number 2 for clearances and he's number 2 for scoreboard impact. He has added some real quality around the ball and they need that at the coalface. So right now, pick 45 looks like a very good piece of business for Jack Macrae. Jack Higgins, Chad, is a name that we did not discuss when we went through the best small forwards in the game only a few weeks ago. And you think what he's done in the last 2 years. 36 goals last year, 36 goals in 2023. He is going to a new level right now. He's up to 9 goals to start the year, but he's rated number 6 in the AFL for scoreboard impact points. And the 5 above him are all key forwards. So don't sleep on Jack Higgins. He's entering the conversation amongst the elite small forwards in this competition. Marcus Windhager is a name that we don't discuss too often when we discuss the best taggers in the game. Now, Finn McGuinness had that title last year. He's not doing that role right now. James Jordan is thriving as a tagger at Sydney. Toby Bedford is dominating as a tagger at Greater Western Sydney. But Marcus Windhager has a heap of scalps across the last 18 months. And in the past fortnight, he's done a big job on Tim Taranto, the Jack Dyer medalist. And he's also clamped Max Holmes, who won the best and fairest last year at Geelong. I just want to point out Nazai Wanganeen-Miller, who had a breakout year last year, came 5th in the Trevor Barker, but he's gone to another level across the pre-season. He was the standout at RSCA Park across the summer, and he's carried that form into 2025. He's rated elite in almost every category right now. He's one of the best kicks in the comp, but he's number 1 for scoreboard launches at St Kilda. He's having a huge impact, and it's a key reason why they're so desperate to keep him beyond 2025.
Yeah, the South Australian clubs are coming for him, that's for sure. Let's get to the hook now, and Fremantle has some absolute stars on its list, but the Bulldogs are going to have to curtail one man, and his name is Caleb Serong, because, Chad, he is so critical to Fremantle's engine room and their flag hopes this season. What sets him apart in your mind from other midfielders in the comp?
Well, what sets him apart is that he's 24 years old. So I think we think about some of the best best midfielders. They are pretty young at this stage, but he's won a record equaling 4th Glendenning Allen Award for best on ground in the Derby.
At 24.
24 at 24. Like, you think about the greats that have been at Freo and West Coast, and he's obviously got the record at 24. But what sets him apart is actually his clearance work. So last year he was 3rd in clearance in the total AFL. So that just shows how important it is around the stoppage. And I think what's going to happen this week with Western Bulldogs, I mean, you spoke about James Jordan, about how he nullified players coming in the last few weeks. He was only one to get the job on Caleb Serong, and he actually kept him to 19 touches, 1 goal and 5 clearances. I think last week, obviously, Serong had 35 and 10. I think Bulldogs are going to have to put a little bit more effort into him. I don't think it's going to be a full-blown tag, but I think Liberatore is going to go to him at stoppages because he's such a dog, as you would say, for Western Bulldogs. Bit of a pun of my own. But I think he'll go to him at stoppages and kind of nullify him at that spot.
And I mean, someone like a Tom Liberatore, I mean, I feel like, Josh, we don't talk about him enough. He's leading the club at the moment in Marcus Bontempelli's absence. He's just no fuss. He goes about his business, but he's still one of the more elite midfielders in the competition, and he's getting on in age.
He is now. This could be his last year. He's out of contract. I reckon he goes around again. He's playing that well right now. He's only behind Jordan Dawson in the coaches' votes. He's polled in all 3 games to start the year. He's probably been best on ground in the past 2 weeks. And with no Marcus Bontempelli, he has really relished the leadership title. And this is something that we didn't know he had in his armoury. When you think about it, no one ever spoke about Tom Liberatore as a captain, as a leader. He was vice-captain last year, and right now as a stand-in skipper, he is dominating.
So the game between Fremantle and the Western Bulldogs also sees 2 coaches who entered season 2025 under a lot of pressure facing off against each other. Bulldogs coach Luke Beveridge isn't contracted beyond 2025, and he's been surprisingly open about his future in the media in recent weeks.
Will you be at the club next year, do you think? In an ideal world, are you coaching the Western Bulldogs in 2026?
Well, possibly. We've taken probably a week-by-week approach to what the future might look like. You can still almost wear out your welcome at an establishment as well.
Possibly. That word really just piqued my interest. Chad, from your perspective, if you were a player, hearing your coach talk like that in the media, what goes through your mind?
Well, I think from an outside source, I think it's very strategic by Bevo. I think he's, maybe sussing out what's next, but also maybe putting, Bulldogs on notice that you want to get this job done. Maybe he wants to stay there. But from a player's perspective, I think it doesn't give you great confidence, especially when the team's playing probably out of their skin in terms of their, I suppose, the injuries that they've had without Bond, without Chalor. You know, Jones missed a couple games. It does concern me if you're a player, you're hearing that. I mean, those conversations should be kept in the four walls.
He's a career coach, though. So if he's not coaching the Western Bulldogs in 2026, he's coaching somewhere else. Well, he has coached for the best part of 25 years now, dating back to St Bede's Mentone in the Ammos. We know that story, of course. So I think he'll coach somewhere else if he doesn't coach at the Western Bulldogs.
Well, you know, he's got a very strong relationship with Fremantle's CEO and Simon Gabelich, who used to be at the Western Bulldogs. Read into that what you will. And we talk about Justin Longmuir, who's also had the pressure on. And Josh, he's got a 50% win rate. He's on that rolling contract now as a full-time employee, which I don't think takes the pressure off at all. But when it comes to Fremantle, they need to see results because the time for talking is over. They need finals wins, and that's why the heat is on him.
Well, they got the result on the weekend. They were desperate for a performance.
It was against West Coast.
I know that. This is a much bigger challenge for them. They're going to come up against an informed team, and we need to see a performance that really says that they're going to be a finals contender this year because right now under Justin Longmuir, in his 5 completed seasons, they've only played finals once. They played 2 finals back in 2022. We expected them to play finals last year. We expect them to play finals this year. 1 and 3 is a long way back. So if they're 2 and 2, they're back on track.
There are so many layers and storylines amongst this game, which makes it such an intriguing clash. Cannot wait for Sunday. Hey, love your work, both of you, doing an outstanding job here on the round ahead. And that is all we have time for. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back again next Wednesday with the same show. Thanks to Coles. Enjoy the footy.